A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. Abridged and adapted, well, mostly, by Mark Harborough. Marley was dead, to begin with. Old Marley was as dead as a doornail. This must be understood, or nothing wonderful can come of the story I'm going to relate. Ebenezer Scrooge and he were partners in a counting house for I don't know how many years. Scrooge was his sole executor, his sole administrator, his sole friend, his sole mourner. But Scrooge was a squeezing, wrenching, grasping, scraping, clutching, covetous old sinner. Heat and cold had little influence on him. No warmth could warm, no cold could chill him. No wind that blew was bitterer than he. No falling snow was more intent upon its purpose. Foul weather didn't know where to take him. Nobody ever stopped him in the street to ask after his health. No beggars implored him for charity. No children asked him what it was o'clock. Even the blind men's dogs appeared to know him, and when they saw him coming, would tug their owners into doorways out of sight. One cold, dark, biting, foggy Christmas Eve, old Scrooge sat busy in his counting house.
It's a bitter night, Mr. Scrooge. I'll be pleased to get home to a warm fire and a Merry Christmas.
That's as maybe, Cratchit. But we'll not be putting more coals on the fire here.
Scrooge's nephew entered the room.
Merry Christmas, Uncle.
Bah! Humbug!
Christmas? A humbug, Uncle. You don't mean that.
If I could work my will. Every idiot who goes about with Merry Christmas on his lips should be boiled with his own pudding and buried with a stake of holly through his heart.
Oh, don't be angry, Uncle. Come for Christmas dinner tomorrow.
Scrooge's nephew departed his uncle's counting house.
Bah! Humbug. My nephew. 15 shillings a week, and a wife and a family. Yeah, talking about a Merry Christmas. Humbug.
A gentleman appeared at the door and bowed politely to Scrooge.
Is it Mr. Scrooge or Mr. Marley?
Mr. Marley died 7 years ago this very night.
Mr. Scrooge, a few of us are going to buy the poor some meat and drink and means of warmth. What would you like to give?
Nothing. They can go to debtors' prisons.
Many would rather die.
If they would rather die, they had better do it quickly and decrease the surplus population. Good afternoon, sir.
Scrooge went back to his work, while the fog and darkness and biting cold thickened. One cold young boy stooped down at Scrooge's keyhole to sing a Christmas carol.
God rest ye merry gentlemen, let nothing you dismay.
Ah, humbug!
Scrooge jumped up to the door and whacked the keyhole with his papers. The carol singer ran off in terror.
Right, Cratchit. You will get no more useful work done today. You can fetch your hat and scarf and be on your way. You'll want all day tomorrow, I suppose.
With quite convenient, sir.
Well, it's not convenient. And it's not fair. If I was to stop half a crown for it, you'd think yourself mightily ill-used, I'll be bound.
Oh, yes, sir.
And yet, you don't think me ill-used when I pay a day's wages for no work?
Oh, but it is only once a year, sir.
A poor excuse for picking a man's pocket every 25th of December. Well, I suppose you must have the whole day. And be here all the earlier next morning.
Scrooge made sure the books and the desks were tidy before locking up and making his way home. The streets were empty. His yard was dark and the biting fog and frost hung about the gloomy house. The knocker on Scrooge's door was very large and ordinary, but tonight it was somehow different. It looked like Marley's face. Marley's face. The eyes were wide open, and its greyish colour made it horrible. As Scrooge blinked and looked, it became a knocker again. He looked again carefully, but there was nothing behind the door, so he entered his house and closed it quickly, with a bang. He walked through his rooms to see that all was right, and sat by the fire.
Humbug!
And then he heard it, a clanking noise from the cellar, as if some person were dragging a heavy chain. Scrooge sat pinned to his chair by the fire as he heard the noise coming up the stairs and straight towards his door. A ghostly figure came in through the heavy door and passed into the room before his eyes. It was pulling a long, heavy chain made of cash boxes, keys, padlocks, and purses. His body was transparent, so that Scrooge could see the 2 buttons on his coat behind.
What do you want with me? Who are you?
In life, I was your partner, Jacob Marley.
Humbug, I tell you. Humbug!
Do you believe in me or not?
I do. I must. But why do spirits walk the earth? And why do they come to me?
It is required of every man that the spirits within him should walk abroad among his fellow men. And if that spirit does not go forth in life, it is condemned to do so after death.
You are chained. Tell me why.
I wear the chain I forged in life. I made it link by link and yard by yard, and of my own free will I wore it. Ebenezer Scrooge, your chain was as heavy as this 7 Christmas Eves ago. And since then, you have made it longer still.
But you were always a good man of business, Jacob.
Business? Mankind was my business. Kindness was my business. I am here tonight to warn you. You will be haunted by 3 spirits.
I think I'd rather not.
Expect the first tomorrow, when the bell tolls 1. Expect the second on the next night at the same hour. The third upon the next night at the last stroke of 12.
When it had said these words, the spectre floated out upon the bleak, dark night. The air was filled with moaning phantoms, and every one of them wore chains like Marley's ghost. Scrooge closed the window and examined the door by which the ghost had entered. It was still as he had double-locked it, with his own hands. He tried to say, "Humbug," but stopped. Scrooge took off his scarf and coat and pulled his long shirt out. He went straight to bed and fell asleep upon the instant. When Scrooge awoke, it was dark. The chimes of a neighbouring church struck the hour with a deep, melancholy 1. Light flashed up in the room, and the curtains of his bed were drawn aside by someone's hand. Scrooge found himself face to face with the unearthly visitor who drew them apart. It was a strange figure, like a child or an old man. Its white hair hung about its neck and down its back, and yet the face had not a wrinkle in it. Its legs and feet were bare. It wore a white tunic with a shining belt. It held a branch of fresh green holly in its hand, and had its dress trimmed with summer flowers.
Are you the spirit whose coming was foretold to me?
I am the ghost of Christmas past.
Long past?
No, your past. Rise and walk with me.
The spirit put out its hand and clasped Scrooge gently by the arm. They passed through the wall and stood upon an open country road. Now it was a clear, cold winter day, with snow upon the ground.
Good heavens! I remember this place. I was a boy here. This was my childhood.
You recollect the way?
Remember it? I could walk it blindfolded. See that old gate? I've seen 6 boys sitting atop of that gate, and if one went over, they all went with him. Look at that tree over there. You'll see the initials of most of the other lads in the town, someplace or other. Look! Here they come now! Riding up out of town on those shaggy old ponies. Hello, Tommy. Hello, Will, George, Charlie. Hello.
Merry Christmas.
But why was he filled with gladness when he heard them tell each other Merry Christmas as they parted? What was Merry Christmas to Scrooge? What good had it ever done to him?
These are but shadows of the things that have been. They do not see us. But let us go to your old school. It is not quite deserted. Its windows are broken, and the many rooms cold and bare of food. But a lonely child, neglected by his friends, is still there, sitting, reading, near a feeble fire. Do you remember this poor, forgotten shadow of yourself as you used to be?
Poor boy. I wish I could. But it's too late now.
What is the matter?
Nothing. There was a boy singing a Christmas carol at my door last night. I should have given him something. That's all.
The ghost smiled thoughtfully and waved its hand.
Let us see another Christmas. Ah, your sister.
I have come to bring you home, dear brother. We're to be together all Christmas long and have the merriest time in all the world.
Your sister, always a delicate creature, but she had a big heart.
So she had. You're right, Spirit.
She died a woman and had, I think, one child. Your nephew?
Yes.
Come to the city with me. Do you recognize this old warehouse?
Know it? Why, he was apprenticed here. Why, bless his heart, it's Fezziwig, alive again.
Scrooge, as a young man, stood with his fellow apprentices as old Fezziwig laid down his pen, looked up at the clock, and rubbed his hands with glee.
Ah, well, look at the time. It's 4 o'clock. No more work tonight, my boys. It's Christmas Eve, Dick. It's Christmas, Ebenezer. Clear away, lads.
It was done in a minute. The floor was swept, the lamps were trimmed, fuel was heaped upon the fire, and the warehouse became a snug, warm, and bright ballroom. In came a fiddler with a music book. In came Mrs. Fezziwig and the 3 Miss Fezziwigs. In came all the young men and women employed in the business. The housemaid, the baker, the cook, the milkman. Away they all went, 20 couples at once. There were dances and games, and there was cake and roast beef and mince pies, and plenty of ale. During all this time, Scrooge had acted like a man out of his wits. He enjoyed everything. Now that he remembered the ghost, he became conscious that it was looking full upon him.
A small matter to make these silly folks so full of gratitude.
Small? It isn't that, Spirit. He has the power to make our work a pleasure or a toil. The happiness he gives is quite as great as if it cost a fortune.
Scrooge stopped and was wrapped in thought.
What is the matter?
Nothing particular.
Something, I think.
I should like to be able to say a word or two to my clerk just now. That's all.
My time grows short. Quick! There is a young lady in your past whom you may have forgotten. You are engaged to be married, I believe.
It matters very little to you. Another idol has displaced me.
What idol has displaced you?
A golden one. The love of money. I have seen your nobler aspirations fall off one by one until only gain and greed engross you.
Yes, I have grown much wiser. But what of it? I am not changed towards you. Have I ever sought release from our engagement?
Not in words, but in a changed nature and in an altered spirit. I believe the man you are now would regret being bound to a girl I shall remain. So, I release you with a full heart for the love of him you once were, and may you be happy in the life you have chosen.
Spirit! Show me no more! I cannot bear it! Leave me! Take me back! Hold me no longer!
Scrooge was conscious of being exhausted and of being in his own bedroom. He had fallen into his bed before he sank into a heavy sleep. Scrooge waited again. Now, when the bell struck 1, he saw a ghostly light coming from the next room. He shuffled to the door. The room was hung with holly and mistletoe, and a mighty blaze went roaring up the chimney. Heaped up like a throne were geese, pies, plum puddings, chestnuts, oranges, pears, cakes, and punch. Upon this food couch there sat a jolly giant. He was clothed in a green robe, bordered with white fur. Its feet were bare, and on its head it wore a holly wreath, set here and there with shining icicles. It was an image the like of which Scrooge had never seen before.
Come in and know me better, man. I am the ghost of Christmas present. Look upon me.
Spirit, conduct me where you will. I went forth last night and I learnt a lesson which is working now. Tonight, if you have anything to teach me, let me profit by it.
Touch my robe.
Feast, fire, room all vanished instantly, and they stood in the city streets on a snowy Christmas morning. The sky was gloomy, and yet there was an air of cheerfulness abroad like a summer day. Soon the steeples called the people to church, and away they came, flocking through the streets in their best clothes, and with their happiest faces. The good spirit led Scrooge straight to his clerk's house, and at the door the spirit smiled and stopped to bless Bob Cratchit's dwelling. Mrs. Cratchit, a homely woman in a worn dress, spoke to the little Cratchits.
Oh, what has ever got your precious father then? And your brother Tiny Tim? They should be back from church by now. Oh, bless my life. Here he comes. Oh, and how did little Tim behave?
As good as gold. He told me that he hoped the people saw him in the church because he was a cripple, and it might do him good to remember on Christmas Day who made lame beggars walk and blind men see.
Oh, bless his little face. Now, let's get these dishes on the table. You little cherubs all make sure your hands are clean. And Mr. Cratchit, you say grace.
Dear Lord, bless the food upon our plates, bless our family and our friends, and Lord, bless all those people less fortunate than ourselves.
Amen.
Mrs. Cratchit, I don't believe there was ever such a goose cooked so well.
Well, thank you, Mr. Cratchit. And when you've eaten all of that, there's a pudding as big as a cannonball, blazing with brandy and with Christmas holly stuck into the top.
Oh, well, in that case, let me propose a toast. A Merry Christmas to us all, my dears. God bless us.
God bless us, everyone.
The dinner was cleared, and they all sat around, replete. Tim sat very close to his father's side upon his little stool. Bob held his withered little hand in his, as if he loved the child, and wished to keep him by his side, and dreaded that he might be taken from him.
Spirit, tell me if Tiny Tim will live.
I see a vacant seat in the corner, and a crutch without an owner, carefully preserved. If these shadows remain unaltered by the future, the child will die.
Oh no, kind spirit, say he will be spared.
If these shadows remain unaltered by the future, he will die this year. What was it you said to the charity collectors? If he be like to die, he had better do it and decrease the surplus population.
Scrooge hung his head, ashamed to hear his own words.
Will you decide what men shall live, what men shall die? It may be that in the sight of heaven you are more worthless and less fit to live than millions like this poor man's child?
Another toast. Mr. Scrooge. I give you Mr. Scrooge, the founder of the feast.
The founder of the feast, indeed.
My dear, it's Christmas Day.
I'll drink his health for your sake and the day's, not for his. Long life to him. A Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
The children drank the toast after her, but they didn't care for it. Scrooge was the ogre of the family. The mention of his name cast a dark shadow on the party. They were not a handsome family. They were not well dressed, but they were happy, grateful, pleased with one another, and contented with the time. Scrooge watched them, and especially Tiny Tim, until the last. Now, Scrooge and the spirit travelled through coal miners' homes, past ships on the dark sea, and everywhere they went, no matter how poor, every person hummed a Christmas tune, or had a Christmas thought, and every person, good or bad, had a kind word for another on that day. Then Fred and his wife came into view.
Uncle Ebenezer said that Christmas was a humbug, as I live. He believed it too.
More shame for him, Fred.
He's a comical old fellow, and not as pleasant as he might be. However, his offences carry their own punishment, and I am sorry for him. Who suffers by his ill whims? Himself, always.
They had some music and played at games. For it is good to be children sometimes, and never better than at Christmas. They all played and sang, and so did Scrooge, singing quite loud. He begged like a boy to be allowed to stay until the guests departed, but this the spirit said could not be done. Much they saw, and far they went, and everywhere the spirit he left his blessing. It was a long night, and Scrooge noticed that the ghost grew older, and he noticed that its hair was grey.
Our spirits' lives, so short.
My life upon this globe is very brief. It ends tonight at midnight. Hark! The time is drawing near.
The bell struck 12, and the spirit of Christmas present disappeared. As the last stroke ceased to vibrate, he remembered the prediction of old Jacob Marley. All at once, a shrouded spirit appeared above Scrooge. And lifting up his eyes, beheld a solemn phantom, draped and hooded, coming like a mist along the ground towards him. The phantom approached in a deep black garment, which left nothing of it visible but for one bony hand.
Am I in the presence of the ghost of Christmas yet to come? You are about to show me shadows of the things that will happen. Is that so, Spirit? Ghost of the future. I fear you more than any spectre I have seen. But I know your purpose is to do me good. And I am prepared to bear you company. And do it with a thankful heart. Will you not speak to me?
The spirit did not reply, but extended its bony hand, pointing straight ahead.
Lead on. Lead on. The night is precious time to me, I know. Lead on, Spirit.
The phantom moved away. Suddenly, They were in the heart of the city, amongst the merchants who hurried up and down and chinked the money in their pockets, as Scrooge had seen them often. The spirit stopped beside one little knot of businessmen, pointing to them. Scrooge advanced to listen to their talk. He overheard the words of a great fat man with a monstrous chin.
I don't know much about it. I only know he's dead.
When did he die?
Oh, it was last night, I believe.
What has he done with his money?
Well, I haven't heard. It's likely to be a very cheap funeral, for I don't know anyone who's going to go to it.
Oh, I don't mind going if a lunch is provided.
Scrooge knew the men and looked towards the spirit for an explanation. Scrooge fancied that the unseen eyes were looking at him closely. It made him shudder and feel very cold. They went into a dirty part of town where the shops and houses reeked with filth and misery. There was a shop where greasy junk was bought.
Will you give me for this lot then, Flo? A pencil case and a brooch?
Prices are on the wall!
I know these things. They are just like mine. They are worth much more than this man is paying.
Who's next? Mrs. Dilber? What have you got for me?
Sheets and towels and a couple of teaspoons. Silver, mind you. A pair of sugar tongs. Oh, yeah, and these old boots.
I paid 2 shillings 10 for teaspoons just like those. And, well, that fabric is just the colour of my bed curtains.
What about this quality fabric then, Flo?
Bed curtains? You don't mean to say you took him down, rings and all, with him lying there dead?
Yeah, I do. Why not?
His blankets too?
Who else do you think? And that's the best shirt he had. And a fine one too. They'd have wasted it if it hadn't have been for me. Putting it on him to be buried in. But I took it off him again.
Scrooge looked at a shirt just like his own shirt and listened in horror as old Flo paid the women out.
This is the end of it. You'll see. He frightened everyone away from him when he was alive to profit us when he was dead.
Spirit, I see. I see. The case of this unhappy man might be my own.
The women bundled up a white sheet on the table like a wrapped corpse.
Merciful heaven, what is this?
He recoiled in terror, for the scene had changed, and now he almost touched a bed, a bare, uncurtained bed, on which, beneath a ragged sheet, lay the body of the man they spoke of. He lay in the dark, empty house, with no one to say that he was kind to anyone in this or that way at all.
Spirit, this is a fearful place. Let us go.
The ghost conducted him to poor Bob Cratchit's house, and found the mother and the children seated round the fire, very quiet. The little Cratchits were as still as statues in one corner, with Peter, who had a book before him. The mother and the daughters were sewing, but surely they were very quiet. The mother laid her work upon the table and put her hand up to her face.
Oh, it must be past your father's time. I think he has walked a little slower than he used these last few evenings. He used to walk with Tiny Tim upon his shoulder, very fast indeed, but he was very light to carry, and his father loved him so. Oh, there is your father at the door.
Mrs. Cratchit hurried out to meet him. Bob broke down all at once and cried. He couldn't help it. They drew about the fire and talked. Bob told them of the extraordinary kindness of Mr. Scrooge's nephew, whom he had scarcely seen but once.
Oh, I'm heartily sorry for it, Mr. Cratchit, he said, and sorry for your good wife. I'm sure we shall none of us forget poor Tiny Tim, shall we?
Never, Father.
Spectre, tell me what man that was whom we saw lying dead.
The ghost of Christmas yet to come did not answer, but led him straight on, until they reached an iron gate, a churchyard.
Answer me one question. Are these the shadows of the things that will be? Or are they shadows of things that may be only?
The spirit stood among the graves and pointed down to one. Scrooge's gaze followed the finger and read upon the stone of the grave his own name. Ebenezer Scrooge.
No, Spirit! No! No, Spirit, hear me! I am not the man I was. Why show me this if I am past all hope? A good Spirit, I will honour Christmas in my heart and try to keep it all the year. I will live in the past, the present, and the future. The spirits of all three shall strive within me. I will not shut out all the lessons that they teach. Oh, tell me I may sponge away the writing on this stone.
In his agony, he caught the spectral hand. The phantom's hood and dress shrunk, collapsed, and dwindled down into a bedpost. So we reach the final part of our story, Christmas Day, though Scrooge does not know it yet. Scrooge woke and realised that the bedpost was his own. The bed was his own. The room was his own. Best and happiest of all, the time before him was his own. Time enough to make amends in. Scrooge scrambled out of bed.
I will live in the past, the present and the future. The spirits of all three shall strive within me. Oh, Jacob Marley, heaven and the Christmas time be praised for this. I say it on my knees, old Jacob, on my knees.
Scrooge grabbed his bed curtains and old clothes and hugged them in his arms.
My things are still here. I am here. The shadows of the things that would have been may yet be dispelled. They will be. I know they will. I don't know what to do. I am as light as a feather. I am as happy as an angel. I am as merry as a schoolboy. I am as giddy as a drunken man. A Merry Christmas to everybody. A Happy New Year to all the world. There's the door by which the ghost of Jacob Marley entered. There's the corner where the ghost of Christmas present sat. There's the window where I saw the wandering spirits. It's all right. It's all true. It's all happened. I don't know what day of the month it is. I don't know how long I've been among the spirits. I don't know anything. I'm quite a baby. Never mind. I don't care. I'd rather be a baby.
The churches began ringing out the lustiest peals he had ever heard. Clash, clang, hammer, ding, dong, bell. Oh, glorious, glorious. Running to the window, he opened it and put out his head. No fog, no mist. Clear, bright, cold, golden sunlight. Heavenly sky, sweet fresh air, merry bells. Oh, glorious, glorious. Scrooge called downward to a boy in Sunday clothes.
Excuse me, boy. What's today?
Eh?
What's today, my fine fellow?
Today? Why, it's Christmas Day.
It's Christmas Day. I haven't missed it. The spirits have done it all in one night. They can do anything they like. Of course they can. Of course they can. Hello, my fine fellow.
Hello.
Do you know the poultry shop in the next street? At the corner?
I should hope I did.
An intelligent boy. A remarkable boy. Do you know whether they've sold the prize turkey that was hanging up there? Not the little prize turkey. The big one.
What? The one as big as me?
What a delightful boy. Yes, yes.
It's hanging there now.
Is it? Go and buy it.
What?
I am in earnest. Go and tell them bring it here, that I may give them the direction where to take it. Come back with the man, and I'll give you a shilling. Come back with him in less than 5 minutes, and I'll give you half a crown.
The boy ran off like a shot. Scrooge rubbed his hands with glee.
I'll send it to Bob Cratchit's. He shan't know who sends it. It's twice the size of Tiny Tim.
He wrote the address somehow and went downstairs to open the street door, ready for the coming of the poulterer's boy. As he stood there, waiting his arrival, the knocker caught his eye. No longer the source of his nightmares, Scrooge patted it with one hand.
I shall love it, as long as I live. It's a wonderful knocker.
The boy and the poulterer arrived, with an enormous turkey between them.
Ah, here's the turkey. How are you? Merry Christmas.
Oh, I mustn't grumble, your lordship. Thanks for asking. Nearly done for the day now.
Why, it's impossible to carry that to Camden Town. You must have a cab.
Scrooge paid the delivery boy handsomely.
Oh, much obliged, sir. That much? Cool. Thank you very much.
The chuckle with which Scrooge paid for the turkey, and the chuckle with which he paid for the cab, and the chuckle with which he recompensed the boys, were only to be exceeded by the chuckle with which he got himself dressed. And he chuckled till he cried. He dressed himself all in his best, and at last got out into the streets. The people were by this time pouring forth, as he had seen them with the ghost of Christmas present, and Scrooge regarded every one with a delighted smile.
Oh, good morning, sir. A Merry Christmas to you.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
And Scrooge said often afterwards that of all the happy sounds he had ever heard, those were the happiest in his ears. He had not gone far when, coming on towards him, he beheld the gentleman who had walked into his counting house the day before. It sent a pang across his heart to think how this old gentleman would look upon him when they met. But he knew what path lay straight before him, and he took it.
My dear sir, how do you do? I hope you succeeded yesterday. It was very kind of you, and Merry Christmas to you, sir. Allow me to ask your pardon, and will you have the goodness to allow me to give you...
Scrooge whispered in the gentleman's ear.
Lord bless me. My dear Scrooge, are you serious?
If you please, not a farthing less. And a great many back payments are included in it, I assure you. Will you do me that favour?
Oh, my dear sir, I don't know what to say.
Don't say anything, please. But will you come and visit me on occasion, to tell me how things are?
I will.
Thank you. I am much obliged to you. I thank you 50 times. Bless you.
Scrooge stood centre in a whirl of joy as people walked past, stopped to greet him, moved on, and went about their merry Christmas morning. Scrooge then went to church and walked about the streets and watched the people hurrying to and fro and patted children on the head and found that everything could yield him pleasure. He had never dreamt that anything could give him so much happiness. In the afternoon, he turned his steps towards his nephew's house. He passed the door a dozen times before he had the courage to go up and knock. But he made a dash and did it.
Is your master at home, my dear?
Yes, sir.
Where is he, my love?
He's in the dining room, sir, along with mistress. I'll show you upstairs, if you please.
He knows me. I'll go in here, my dear. Fred?
Why, bless my soul, who's that?
It is I, your Uncle Scrooge. I've come to dinner. Will you let me in, Fred?
Let you in? It's so wonderful to see you, Uncle Ebenezer. I must say that I didn't expect to see you today, but now you're here, you must stay for dinner.
Fred's family came to guide Scrooge into the dining room. There was wonderful food, a wonderful party, wonderful games, and wonderful happiness.
Well, I must say it's absolutely wonderful that Scrooge has turned up. I really wasn't expecting that at all. Fabulous. I'm so pleased.
But Scrooge was early at the office next morning. He wanted to be there first and catch Bob Cratchit coming late. That was the thing he had set his heart upon. And he did it. Yes, he did. The clock struck 9. No Bob. 1:15. No Bob. He was full 18 minutes and a half behind his time. Scrooge sat with his door wide open that he might see him come into the office. And then suddenly Bob Cratchit came rushing in, knowing full well he was late for work. The clerk's hat was off before he opened the door, and he was on his chair in a jiffy, driving away with his pen, as if he were trying to overtake 9 o'clock.
Good morning, Cratchit. Or should I say, good afternoon. What do you mean by coming here at this time of day?
I am very sorry, sir. I am behind my time.
You are? Yes, I think you are. Step this way, sir, if you please.
Oh, it's only once a year, sir. It shall not be repeated. I was making rather merry yesterday, sir, and enjoying a rather large turkey with my family.
Be that as it may, I'll tell you what, my friend. I'm not going to stand this sort of thing any longer. And therefore, I am about to raise your salary.
Mr. Scrooge, I don't know what to say. Are you serious? I've half a mind to call the people in court for help with a straitjacket. Oh, thank you, Mr. Scrooge.
A merrier Christmas, Bob, my good fellow, than I have given you for many a year. I'll raise your salary and endeavour to assist your struggling family. And we will discuss your affairs this very afternoon. Bob Cratchit, make up the fires and buy another coal scuttle before you dot another I.
Scrooge was better than his word. He did it all and infinitely more. And to Tiny Tim, who did not die, he was a second father. He became as good a friend, as good a master, and as good a man as the good old city knew, or any other good old city, town or borough in the good old world. Some people laughed to see the alteration in him, but he let them laugh. His own heart laughed, and that was quite enough for him. He had no further meetings with spirits ever afterwards, and it was always said of him that he knew how to keep Christmas well, if any man alive possessed the knowledge. May that be truly said of us, and of all of us. And so, as Tiny Tim observed,
God bless us, everyone.
Merry Christmas, everybody!
Characters in this Victorian tale were played by Barbara Lloyd, Neil Lovegrove, Tony Price, Sue Waller and Mark Wood. Music and sound design were by Amanda Priestley, and all was directed by Sue Waller.